So I'm Bob Miller, and I'm member of the Marine Conservation League Board of Directors and chair of MCL's Climate Action Working Group. I remind folks that Marine Conservation League's mission is to preserve, protect, and enhance the natural assets of Marin in a changing environment. This committee focuses on mitigating climate change, on accelerating greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Other Marine Conservation League committees focus on a wide range of environmental issues, including adapting to climate change. And I make my typical pitch for, first of all, thanking the people who are members, and for those who are not, you can go to marineconservationleague.org and become a member. We need your support. So I'm going to put up the agenda for the meeting. And so you should be seeing the agenda. Bill Carney organized the first two items on the agenda. Thank you, Bill. He'll introduce the first two speakers and lead those discussions. And following that, Dan Segedin will give us a primer on 24/7 renewable energy. A couple of housekeeping things. Please keep yourself on mute. Put your questions in chat. Know that we're recording the meeting, and we may want to ask the speakers after the meeting for their permission to make the recording available. Then, if you're interested in developing and advocating for innovative positions that accelerate greenhouse gas emissions reduction, contact me and let's talk. My email at the bottom of the agenda. And then finally, Marine Conservation League episodically hosts Business and the Environment breakfasts early in the morning, 30 to 9. Senator Mike McGuire, the California Senate Majority Leader, is talking at the next MCL Business Breakfast. And the day that he had available was the date of the next Climate Action Working Group meeting. So we're either going to move the COG meeting to 10 to 12 that day, or to 10 to 12 on Wednesday of that week. So that's to be determined. Stay tuned. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I think at this point we can just I can just turn things over to Bill. Bill Carney.
Okay, thank you, Bob, and welcome everyone to this update on where Marin is with EVs. As you know, it's EVs transportation accounts for over half of our greenhouse gas emissions in Marin, and that's generally pretty true around the state as well. So that's a really important metric to keep in mind.
Hold on for a second, Bill. If everybody can put themselves on mute, that would be very helpful because we have an echo here.
Okay, we'll try it again. I'm not hearing it anymore, so that seems to work. So that's one big metric, of course, that we're all aware of going into this. Another is that, 12 years from now, Californians aren't going to be able to buy gas cars, and that's right around the corner. So how does Marin get ready for that and prepare ourselves for this necessary and quick transition? So I think that's what we're going to be updated on today, this morning. Marin does have a plan, and we have with us the person who wrote that plan, the Marin's countywide EV acceleration strategy, and that would be Christine O'Rourke. She is principal of O'Rourke and Associates, and she is sustainability coordinator for the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership, which is really a coalition of all of the jurisdictions on a professional staff level. And in that capacity, she is largely responsible for the metrics about for tracking greenhouse gases and importantly for how towns and cities can go about reducing them. She's really been much involved in most, if not all, of the climate action plans around the county and putting those together. We also have with us, so we have a plan. We also have some resources for getting the job done. And we have with us Michaela Hyatt from the Marin Transportation Authority or Transportation Authority of Marin, sorry, TAM. She is an associate transportation planner there and very much involved in how TAM supports this effort countywide, and also working with additional resources from the county itself and from MCE and others. So we're going to hear from each of them in sequence, and then I would like to kind of handle this as a combined presentation and discussion. So once we've heard from each, we will then open it up for general discussion and go from there. Okay. So with that, let me first introduce Christine. If you could wave your hand and say who you are, and okay, and also Michaela. And I see the TAM logo over there. So welcome, both of you. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And Christine, why don't you take it away?
Sure. I hope everybody can hear me okay and see me okay. I'm getting some static on my computer, so I hope it's not a connection issue on my end. But it's nice to see you all, and thank you for having me back. I have a short presentation to share with you, so let me put that up on the screen.
Christine, is it possible that you have something that could be creating an audio problem on your end? You break up a little bit.
Yeah, I just think, I'm going to stop my video and see if that helps. I think it's just, seem to have some kind of connection problem. So can you hear me okay?
You're still breaking up.
Just try plugging everything in. Is that any better?
So no, it's still breaking up. I guess the suggestion that I'd have is logging out and then logging back in.
Also,
Unless somebody else can come up with a better suggestion.
okay, I can also log in by my phone.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to do some of the presentation while I work out these kinks?
I had trouble hearing you.
Okay.
Christine,
If that's helpful,
perhaps we start with Michaela's presentation.
yeah, I can go ahead and start first, just while Christine connects to either phone audio or works on Wi-Fi connections. I'm happy to go ahead and start, if that works.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay, that sounds good. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm Michaela Hyatt. I am TAM's newest transportation planner. I've been with the agency for just about 6 months now, working directly with Derek and the planning team. So learning a lot, but really excited to be working on the EV program, the alternative fuels program, because there's a lot that you all have already done in this space. So it's been great to be able to not pick up from ground zero, but do want to just give you an update on where we're at currently and what we're looking forward to in the future. Starting off, just background, TAM is a local transportation sales tax and congestion management agency. So we invest in a wide range of carbon reduction efforts, which include transit, active transportation, transportation demand management, where we see significant co-benefits to safety, sustainability, and equity for our local communities. Part of that investment portfolio is the Alternative Fuel Program, a subject of interest for many years in the county. And so we're glad to be invited to this, see the ongoing interest and support for TAM initiatives as shown here today. So just numbers, we're super happy with the program and have been able to help deliver the installation of over 420 chargers in the county so far, just through TAM's program. So a little bit of background on that. Back in 2021, TAM provided $54,000 to help fund the MCEP EV readiness strategy, which Christine will present on in just a few moments. And we also provided $54,000 for local jurisdiction outreach, $4,500 for each jurisdiction, which was managed through Cool the Earth, to help in meeting their climate action plan goals. This was a one-time outreach fund while we were working on conducting a formal procurement process to help develop an outreach program that ultimately advances our program goals. Once we completed that procurement, we've been delivering outreach and technical assistance that delivers on defined goals of our outreach program, which are specifically to accelerate EV connector installations on public property in Marin County, to accelerate EV fleet investments in public fleet agencies, and overall improve consumer awareness of programs that support and enhance equitable access to EVs and EV infrastructure. So we retained Reach Strategies, which is a local EV outreach firm focused specifically on EV outreach to help support our outreach efforts, including a letter of interest process, which was issued to all the local jurisdictions just for different projects that they would be interested in moving forward through our pilot program in the future. And they also help us provide technical assistance to support this rapidly evolving space. I feel like there's new information about electric vehicles every week, so they've been a huge help in supporting that. They have completed an outreach plan and have been conducting efforts to support those goals, and that was included in last year's budget, and so we're excited to include that also in our next year's budget. But we're very supportive of local jurisdictions meeting their EV adoption goals as defined in their climate action plans, but because we are a congestion management agency and we don't have any right-of-way, we cannot do it alone, as grid development and building restrictions can make full transition really reliant on partnerships with those local agencies. So as an example of successful partnership, we're super happy that the County of Marin recognized that local governments really have a leading role in this conversation. So in 2022, they released their own contract for EV outreach, and the work is currently underway and should be launched publicly soon. But again, because TAM funds are limited, a partnership approach is super needed to support the wide range of issues facing EV adoption. So list of some of our partnerships include ongoing support for local nonprofits, including Cool the Earth. TAM continues to help support those local outreach efforts and provides funding to local nonprofit organizations as appropriate. We also are assisting and supporting an event at the county fair. So go to the fair in partnership with MCE and the county. And so we'll be interacting with the public and attendees and addressing barriers to adoption, and should have a survey available for that. Hopefully some interactive elements at the fair as well to help increase public awareness. So TAM has also been extremely supportive of federal funding finally coming down, recently including the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant, which was helped coordinated by Cool the Earth. We're submitting that with county and other partners. So this effort is meant to build off of the efforts that were initiated by these contractors in TAM. And so we're really excited to have the ball moving on that. In addition to the federal government finally releasing some funding, recognizing the need for it in this space, the air district programs. So the air district regionally is becoming a little bit less prohibitive for local agencies to apply for those fundings. MCE is increasing their role in transportation electrification and will be rolling out a fleet transportation electrification plan. And MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, is also releasing $65 million for transportation electrification funding coming this summer, which we've been involved with and are really looking forward to that. Hopefully should be coming out in July. But with these resources being so much larger in funding wise than what's available in our program alone, we're really excited to look at those opportunities to see where we're going to be able to leverage our local dollars to maximize the amount that we could do through those larger pots of funding. From the MCE partnership in 2020, we worked with them to deliver a joint rebate program, which you all may be familiar with, where local jurisdictions in Marin applying to MCE's EV rebate program just need to check a box. We want to make it as streamlined as possible. So on the MCE application form, there's a box that says, do you want to apply for TAM's rebate too? And you check that box and then it gets sent our way. So we're really excited to continue to work with them to find ways that are easier and faster to implement EV transitions and chargers and fleet transitions throughout the county. We're going to continue to work with them on the fair outreach, the county fair, this charging and fueling infrastructure application we're working with them on as well, and excited to work further on the fleet transition plan as well. But this all this work that's been done, all this work that you all have done at all the other agencies, it's really shown. As of this last year, 33% of new car sales were electric vehicles, and we're expecting this trend to continue, which will shift the need for outreach in this space, and we're going to continue to monitor that. So as OEMs and car companies increase the amount of EVs in their portfolio, and ramp up their direct to consumer marketing themselves, the role is shifting. So we're going to continue to monitor and assess our efforts based on the growing data and needs that arise to make sure that we're investing our dollars as best as possible and capitalizing on this as best we can to ultimately deliver as many EVs and as many chargers as possible in Marin County. But we really need partners in partnership in that through our alternative fuel program. It's just rapidly changing space. There's many challenges and barriers facing adoption, which is building codes or grid issues, along with supply chain issues, vehicle type and availability, and the purchase of vehicles. So there's a lot of external factors that can impact program delivery. We're really excited and energized by agencies such as the County of Marin stepping into a leadership role and developing their outreach plan, and excited to have this EV readiness strategy being brought to all the local jurisdictions to help really push the envelope on what we can do and what we can deliver in Marin County. But we really need partnership in that. We need advocates in that to help support EV adoption in the county. So really looking forward to all the great work that's going to come in the next few years, because as Bill mentioned, it's going to be fast the next 12 years. We have there's only going to be EV sales by 2035, only allowed to. So we got a lot of work to do, and really appreciate you all and everything that you've done and the continued advocacy in this space. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on TAM's program, or if we have Christine back on the line, we could transition over to the EV readiness strategy update. But thank you so much for having me and letting me give an update.
Okay, thanks a lot, Michaela. We will continue this in a moment, but I did want to check back in, Bob. Is Christine available now, or any report on that?
Yeah, she's. I'm admitting her right now.
So, if she is, then maybe we can transition to Christine's presentation and then come back around with questions. Let me just say though that two modalities of questions here. I was thinking we might just open it up for questions when we get to that point, but it also can be useful for some of you who like to work with chat. That's another way in. But there'll be both those opportunities when we get to Q&A. So Christine, are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's try this again.
Let's try it. Sorry about that, everybody. I restarted my computer, started fresh, so hopefully this will all work fine now. So again, thanks for having me back, and I have a short presentation for you. So I am going to start slideshow. And there we go. So our EV acceleration strategy was published last March. And this strategy was created by the Marine Climate and Energy Partnership. As you all know, we are a coalition of all of the marine jurisdictions, plus the Transportation Authority of Marine Water, and MCE. This particular plan was funded through the Authority of Marin through their alternative fuel program. And when we set out to start to develop the plan over a year ago, we said our goal was to accelerate EV adoption to meet the targets set in each jurisdiction's climate action plan. Those are different, but they range kind of from 25% up to 100% for Fairfax by 2030. And the intent is to develop a plan that could be accepted and or adopted by all jurisdictions. We started off by forming a subcommittee with MCEP, and then we developed our guiding principles, which are outlined in the plan. We conducted a lot of outreach to different stakeholders. We met with all of our jurisdiction staff, including public works staff, because they're really important because they're going to be implementing a lot of this, at least as far as installing EV chargers on municipal property and converting the municipal fleet to EVs. We also met with community leaders and nonprofits, with state agencies. We also reviewed the state agencies' plans and guidance from regional partners as well as other local jurisdictions. And then we drafted the plan and we presented it to this group back in September. So thank you very much for all the comments that were submitted. We incorporated them into the final strategy, which, as I said, was published in March. At that meeting, I gave you a lot of background information, so I'm not going to spend time kind of rehashing that. We did update some of it from September, but please take a look at the plan for all of the existing conditions. We talk about the number of EVs and the percentage of EVs and the chargers and the need for chargers, as well as giving overviews of what the EVs that are in all of the municipal fleets and the chargers that are on in municipal parking lots. So I'm just going to kind of jump right to the actions. We do have a section in the plan that talks about barriers and to EV adoption, and Michaela talked a lot about some of those barriers. So our actions are in 4 different areas. Again, the expectation here is that the jurisdictions will identify and prioritize the actions that are relevant to them for implementation. Not all of the actions are relevant. And we did provide a work plan in the appendix for that purpose. So very briefly, and Bill had asked me to kind of focus on the actions that will kind of move the needle and are probably the most important ones to focus on at this time. So one of the action areas is conducting robust community outreach and education. These all kind of work together, but I just highlighted this conducting EV outreach through city-town communication channels, and that can include social media as well as traditional print media. All of the cities, I think all of them, have a newsletter that usually has very good reach. Their websites, their email blasts, etc. So using that to kind of communicate the benefits of EVs, but also the rebates and incentives. There's a lot more coming, and whenever there's a marketing campaign, the county is working on a marketing campaign right now that is going to focus on lower income and kind of underrepresented populations. Also, like ride and drive events, those can be promoted through the cities and towns communication channels. So I think that it's kind of an ongoing piece, but it's really important now, especially as we're kind of moving to this transition where the state is requiring all vehicles to be electric vehicles to be sold to be electric vehicles by 2030. And we need to make sure that everybody is kind of getting on board with that. The next area is to increase municipal fleet electrification. So I've highlighted these top two. Some of our jurisdictions do have a fleet replacement policy, some do not, but having this policy is in place can be really important. So just a goal to convert the fleet to 100% EVs by 2030. And then the next step here is really developing a fleet replacement plan and integrating that into annual budgets and capital improvement planning. And, where the jurisdictions have authority over their fire and police departments, and they're not separate special districts, to also be sure to include those vehicles in this plan. I've highlighted this because right now we're going through budgeting processes. And if, advocates are going to their city council meetings or town council meetings to say, hey, what about our EV fleet replacement plan? Are there EVs? There certainly are going to be vehicles that are replaced this year. Are they being looked at for suitable EV replacements? And also to be installing EV chargers as well. That's another thing that's important to integrate into capital improvement planning. Another area is to support and advocate for policy and funding that accelerates EV adoption. One very important part here is to support equity priority communities. That's focusing investment in these low-income communities, providing equitable access to rebates and incentives. So a lot of times that can just be providing a deeper discount for lower income folks. And then developing targeted programs for them, such as like replacing an old internal combustion engine vehicle and providing funding to purchase a new or used electric vehicle. And then the last area is accelerating public charging infrastructure. So I'm just going to skip to the second one right now, which kind of piggybacks on what I was just talking about, is identifying these locations for public chargers and including those projects in capital improvement plans. And then the other thing that's really important at this point is adopting this model reach code with EV infrastructure requirements that are above the base code. And we know that because we've done this analysis in the plan, even with the state regulation to require all vehicle sales to be EVs by 2030. And when you look at the expectation of how many EVs that's going to be throughout the state, it doesn't meet what we need to meet our long-term goals here in Marin County. So that just means that we need to do more than what the state's doing. We can't just rely on state programs and state actions to meet our targets. So this is, going above the base code is important. You probably all know what these different terms mean, but the next slide kind of rely on an understanding of them. So I wanted to just quickly review. An EV capable space is one that has the capacity at the panel to support an EV outlet, but not necessarily the wiring and the outlet itself for an electric vehicle. EV ready also provides the branch circuit or the wired outlet. So somebody who has an EV charger can just plug it into this 220 or 240 volt electrical outlet and plug in their electric vehicle. And then EV installed is a space that actually has a charger, and the charger can be a level 2 or level 3 charger. So the Marin County REACH code again, goes beyond what the state code is. As the state code does have one EV ready space required for all single family, 2-family homes and townhomes with private garages, but our requirements for multifamily, commercial, hotels and motels goes beyond. So these are the requirements in the county REACH code. So for multifamily, 85% of parking spaces need to be EV ready with low power level 2 receptacles. And that helps these different spaces to share power. So when they're all plugged in, they can, sometimes you may have to charge at not a full capacity charge, it might be lowered. And then 15% of the spaces must have level 2 chargers installed. So basically 100% of the spaces have to have EV capability. For hotels and motels, 35% of the parking spaces have to be EV ready for level 2 parking receptacles. 10% have to be EV capable, and then 10% must have level 2 EV chargers installed. And this will just provide, it will help to future-proof these developments so that they can add chargers and add additional EV spaces as, EV ready spaces as necessary. And then for commercial buildings, it depends on the number of spaces, how many level 2 chargers are required, but it goes up to 1/3 of the spaces have to have installed level 2 chargers. And then up to 50% of them have to be EV capable, depending on the number of spaces. So this EV, the REACH code is being kind of a lot of the jurisdictions. So far we have 6 jurisdictions that have already adopted it. And this is also showing the all electric construction code because this is a piece of that code. So it's generally being considered at the same time. So we have 6 adopted, 3 that are considering. So by considering, that means they've either, the council is aware of it, they've had some study sessions about the code, and then 3 more that haven't taken any action at this point. Not to say that they're not going to. Mill Valley has a draft climate action plan that needs to be adopted. And then I think at the same, and there also will be hiring a new sustainability or climate action coordinator. So I know that this is something that's on their plate. And then Novato is also going to be updating their climate action plan. So I think we'll have some movement. But when you're asking about what an advocate can do, if your city or town has not yet adopted the REACH code, I would strongly recommend that you go to the council meetings and advocate for that. So as far as the outreach for our EV strategy, I've presented to the Corte Madera City Council and the Larkspur City Council and the Sausalito Sustainability Commission. That's kind of a first step for them. And then it goes on to the Sausalito City Council. I have 3 presentations that are scheduled for San Anselmo, Fairfax, and Ross. These are always subject to change, so I would check your respective council's agenda to make sure that it's on the meeting. Sometimes we get bumped for more important things, or at least they think they're more important. And so very quickly, the actions that were taken. So Corte Madera adopted a work plan that included a lot of different EV actions. One is to conduct a site assessment to increase EV charging capacity on public property and in public spaces. Then to consider adopting this county model REACH code, which as I said, is I believe that one was in process, and developing and implementing a climate outreach strategy. And then there was a separate item to evaluate the EV acceleration strategy and select additional actions to pursue in Corte Madera. Larkspur accepted the EV acceleration strategy, and then the staff report noted that Larkspur has already started executing a lot of these recommendations. They've been incorporating electric vehicles into their fleet and considering EVs in their procurement process. They're also installing EV chargers on city property wherever possible and promoting EVs in city communications. So staff did commit to further incorporating EV strategy recommendations and then providing updates to council on their progress. And then Sausalito recommended that this is the Sustainability Commission recommended that the EV strategy be presented to council. And then they noted a lot of things that Sausalito already is doing and that the actions the commission's taken. So the commission does recommend that the city include EV charging as essential EV city infrastructure and that they install enough chargers to target 30% of vehicles that will be EVs by 2030. So to keep up with that pace and that need. The city is currently installing 14 charging ports at 3 public lots. And the city is also planning to replace EV vehicles. And the commission is conducting outreach around EVs, providing online tools and also promoting other events like riding drive clean events. So that is kind of an update and progress report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure if I'm answering questions now or if we're holding them to the end of the presentations. But thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Christine. I think we can move on now to discussion. I think in Q&A, I'm going to lead off with just a couple, and then we'll open it up. I notice there's quite a bit of chat activity and some answering of questions there as well. But if that hasn't satisfied, or hasn't answered a particular question, then feel free to raise your hand. I wanted to start off by noting what Christine has just laid out in terms of the rollout of this town by town, and a lot of information here. But I think if there's a takeaway, it would be to keep an eye on your local jurisdiction's agenda, and when you see Christine's name or this topic on there, to weigh in, to attend that meeting and support the kind of most important of these actions, support those as priorities for that particular town, because it seems to me, Christine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the strategy really lays out a series of options, and each town is asked to prioritize which actions they're going to follow. So it's really important for us as advocates, I think, to weigh in when it gets to that point, town by town, to say, well, this one is really important and we would support you in doing this. So is that, Christine, kind of the basic process and how we could have input into it?
Yeah, that's correct. When I talk to the jurisdictions, I say, well, one of the things we could do is the staff could take this work plan and develop the work plan and identify the actions and the priorities and who's responsible for it. And then we'll bring the plan and the work plan to the city, the strategy and the work plan to the council for adoption. But they generally, I'm finding, would like to do kind of an introduction, because this is the first time that the councils really are seeing the plan. So they prefer to present the plan and then to go back at a later time with the work plan, or to just simply integrate the work plan into their day-to-day activities. So I think going to the council meetings and advocating for staff to come back with the work plan would be at a later date, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, and the more times the more times a council sees you and the more people they see, the better. So they take every opportunity. I think you mentioned the reach codes, and I think that's a really important part of this as well. That's, these were rolled out last year. And as you say, you gave us a little update chart on how many towns have adopted, but there's still a bunch that have not, on both electrification, but also on the EV parts of that code. So that's another really pending opportunity. And I'm looking here on my screen at David Muller, who does track this stuff and reaches out to folks to alert them, as things come around to town. So hopefully that'll be another source of information as well. Okay. And then Michaela, I was struck by what you mentioned about the outreach that car manufacturers are actually doing at this point, and the fact that you guys are kind of monitoring that and seeing where you might plug in. I'd like to hear a little more about that, how can you really excite people about buying EVs? Because frankly, the car companies historically haven't necessarily focused on that. So where do you see that, and how do you see us locally being able to amplify that effort?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that because of the mandates that are coming down from the state, a lot of private companies are taking that as a charge to finally gear up and start moving. And so a part of that is, one example, I think, is a conversation that we had with Rivian, who's going to be rolling out more chargers, which should be connected to all EVs, not exclusive like Tesla chargers. So as a part of that, so we're excited by that. I know that there's federal mandates for Tesla to also convert some of their chargers from just Tesla chargers into actually being accessible to other vehicles as well. So as different opportunities arise with private companies who are reaching out to us, like Rivian, they're working specifically with the National Park Service right now, but we're plugged into those conversations. So as they come up, we're doing our best to monitor everything that we can possibly use to push for and advocate for. So that's the one example that really comes to mind right now, though. So yeah, but there's also obviously frustrating parts of it, just the manufacturing and how long it takes also for people to get a vehicle once they've put it on order. We're seeing that at the fleet transition level as well. So what we want to try and do through our public agency fleet transition plan is see where there might be an opportunity to explore things like group buys for public agency fleets and their conversions to hopefully help get those vehicles sooner rather than later. But just doing as best we can to try to monitor the private markets and tap into the ever changing EV world as we see it.
Okay, and Mike, I noticed a couple of questions, and so I wanted to ask you for maybe a little more on what the work is that your consultant Reach is doing, particularly in terms of supporting town efforts. But also more generally, this question of how to support the promotion of EVs.
Yeah, so Reach is helping us through identifying different events like the county fair, tapping in with the county of Marin to see where there are those opportunities where we can go and present more on what TAM's program is and what the opportunities are for outreach in those capacities. So watch out for us at the county fair, but it is needs-based. So it's kind of as we are approached by local jurisdictions and identify that need, then we'll work with them for outreach events. We're also doing outreach events focused on first responders, as well as a fleet expo that's coming up in September. So those are the couple that we've identified right now, but keeping it open and want to also make sure that it's flexible. So as needs arise, is really as our program is structured right now, it's needs-based. So as the need arises, we want to be flexible to that. And so if there are other outreach events, you feel free to always reach out to me online. We're really excited by this and want to do what we can to make sure that we're addressing the need.
Okay. So I'm going to try to carve out about 5 minutes at the end of this for some insights into something that hasn't been touched on a lot here, which is the challenge of rolling out EVs to our environmental justice communities, and to multifamily housing in general. Those challenges. And Carleen Cullen has been doing a lot of work with that. So I've asked her to maybe give us a 5-minute wrap up in a few minutes. But let's so just hold that thought. But let's go to general Q&A now. If folks feel like your topic hasn't been covered, please raise your hand. Wow. Okay, there we go. So Wendy, why don't we start with you? Wendy, you with us? You're muted. Wow. No, I'm not getting anything. So we'll come back to Wendy. David.
Thanks, Bill. So I had asked a question on the chat about how to really step up the public outreach, public education around EVs. But I just want to bring up one point as I'm listening to the various programs that TAM is working on and so on. It seems like there's an opportunity that isn't being fully utilized yet, and that is to use the local jurisdictions as a voice piece for communications out to their communities. Like a lot of the things you talked about, Michaela, is TAM programs helping the jurisdictions kind of get their own house in order, their own fleets, their own chargers, their first responders and stuff like this. But if you think about it as consumers, I think the local jurisdictions are actually a pretty trusted source of information. And most jurisdictions do have avenues to communicate out to their communities. And it seems like that program last year, $4,500 per jurisdiction to help with some communications out. You know, it was a very kind of a drop in the bucket compared to an ongoing, let's push this out. Let's actively push this out to our communities. So that's just one area I wanted to bring up and see if maybe TAM could focus some more funding to that kind of direct consumer, push the information out rather than a more passive looking for opportunities where consumers come in. The people who come in are the people who are already interested. I'm talking about getting to the people that aren't even really thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the hardest group.
Yeah.
The 100%. I think what TAM is focusing on right now is wanting to work with you all, and we need advocates also to help and go to our local jurisdictions to help with that, because our dollars are very limited and we're doing what we can to maximize grants, to try to conduct outreach and to focus staff time as much as possible. So as this need is presented, we're happy to have these conversations. We're super excited by it. So need you all in our corner helping to engage with local jurisdictions and continue to push for those outreach events. And again, I'm always available. I'll put my email and contact information. So to keep having these conversations, we're definitely interested in that.
Okay, and Wendy, are you back with us with a question?
Yes, I somehow kicked myself off. I'm trying to unmute. Sorry about that. Really quick, just wanted to get a copy of Christina's presentation, especially the slide of which jurisdictions need to be worked on. So if you could provide that, that would be great.
I'd be happy to.
And the other thing, I know Cooley Earth said they have something, but a really simple list of the vehicles that are available for federal rebates by price and by mileage per charge. Just those really simple information would be so helpful, especially since the Bolt is discontinuing itself. We need to know what else is available.
Okay, so we'll pick up on guiding you to places where you can get that information. I think there are some. So let's go to John Sarter.
Yeah, hi. I think Christine mentioned SB 233, and for those of you that aren't aware, but that's legislation that will require all new EVs to be bidirectional by 2030. Unfortunately, it got pushed back to. But from my perspective, the ability to power your homes and monetize your vehicle by supporting the grid is a tremendous way to promote the adoption of electric vehicles. And I haven't heard it mentioned. I was mentioning it in the chat, but I think heretofore there really haven't been that many options available, but there are a lot of these systems coming onto the market. I work for one company that does that, but there's the Ford. You've seen the success of the Ford F-150. That's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. That's a very expensive system to install, but just my thoughts. And the other thing regarding reach code, it doesn't take much extra wiring to wire a house for bidirectional capability. So if we're going to have these vehicles and these systems coming online, that seems like it's something that should be put into the reach codes, just the pre-wiring for that capability.
Christine, did you want to respond to that one? The role of bidirectional.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think this field is just, moving so quickly that the reach code was really developed before, a lot of movements happened on bidirectionality. I think that's something that we should definitely consider.
Okay. Jody.
Hi, everybody. Just on the issue of bidirectionality, I just want to mention, Fairfax has been, our climate action committee has been, we took a vote the other day to ask our council to pass a resolution favoring bi-directional equipment in cars whenever possible. We got a little bit of pushback that that's going to be part of the fleet electrification plans that are going to be rolling out months later, but we're still pushing to have that be made much more public because of the issues around power outages, all the reasons, the grid, all the good reasons that bidirectionality is important to highlight right now, especially as people start to look at EVs. But so that's just one quick comment. But the other thing I just want to mention is, there's a lot of focus on outreach and community work, and TAM might not have much money, but neither do the towns. We are really stretched, and our little newsletter, as I said in the chat, we get 1 or 2 sentences, maybe 3 at most, in every newsletter to say something about the climate action work that we're doing. And we have probably, 8 or 10 things we want to be, quote, advertising and reaching the public that way. So those newsletters, and there isn't really any print media anymore in terms of the towns, those electronic ones are just not going to be enough. We really need the county and or more funding for some of the local nonprofits to help highlight all the actions that we're taking, whether it's what resilient neighborhoods can offer folks, what EV car shows are out there, what webinars we need. We do tabling and library events. We need publicity for those. We don't have the people power. So this is my needs that I think all of the communities share, and especially those that don't even have climate action committees or sustainability commissions to help figure out how you could do things. So we need a lot more help at the grassroots level if we really want to be where the people are and meet them, especially in person, to talk about all these initiatives that are super important to get in front of people. As we know, we're hitting 1.5 sooner than we thought. So I just want to keep making that point, is that the towns need help, and they need it countywide, and on a lot of different fronts. So thanks.
Okay, Christine or Michaela, any response to that idea? Request?
Well, more funding is always welcome, for sure. I do think that, a lot of the cities, we have some sustainability coordinators, climate action coordinators that have just started or started recently or are coming on board. And it's really, really helpful. I always see that the towns or the cities that have a dedicated sustainability coordinator get a lot more done. So, we have Katie Tho Garcia in Sausalito. We have Phoebe Golden, who came in at Corte Madera. There's a new coordinator who's going to be sharing responsibilities for Mill Valley and Tiburon. I don't know that person's been hired yet, but I think they're getting very close. So that's very helpful in doing more communications and more outreach. Doing just standardized messages that everybody can push out is just really helps to reduce the time and the staff time and the resources that are needed. And it's much easier to do it like through social media or doing it through a newsletter or something electronic. Doing anything by mail, like if a town is going to do a townwide mailer, that costs thousands of dollars. It is effective, I must say. There are still lots of people who look at their mail. I know just from doing other projects and using print media that it can be effective, and even doing advertising in local newspapers. So that takes more money, and again, always more money is always needed and welcome.
Okay, and maybe one more question. Alan, you've had your hand up for a while.
Well, one opportunity to get more ICE vehicles off the road that hasn't been mentioned at all is the use of electric bicycles. And for a very short time, there was federal legislation in the IRA that would give rebates for lower income people for bikes that were lower costs, like I believe it was under $3,000. So to give credits or rebates off the cost of those e-bikes, I think people on very low budgets, the idea of getting an EV is a dream. Whereas if they had an e-bike, they might make a lot more trips on that than in their old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old car. So any thoughts there? I think if Marin could work out some sort of e-bike rebates, we might prove to other counties that is would be a successful way of reducing pollution. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, e-bikes are great. I have one myself. I love it. It's fantastic. I will drop in the chat. Cal Bike actually through CARB is intending to release an e-bike incentive program. That's just super recent. So we want to make sure that it's also publicized as best as we possibly can, publicized through our channels, that this is available for people. But yes, definitely want to consider that moving forward.
Okay, really good discussion here. A lot of information. I did want to, as I said, carve out a couple of minutes for Carlene to update us on, speaking of money, on a lot of federal money that may be available for assisting particularly environmental justice communities. And she's been involved in really trying to marshal that forward. So on the equity front and the multifamily front. So Carlene, did you want to give us a little report on that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. If you read the Marin IJ, you will have noticed 2 days ago, the front page headline story was about Marin County eyeing federal funding for from the IIJA. And this is for up to $15 million for charging infrastructure. The main focus is on low income and multifamily communities. A little bit of background that Congressman Huffman reached out to Cool the Earth about 8 months ago, asking us to develop a plan for how Marin could prepare to apply for this funding. And our approach has really been from the bottom up. We are working with and have the support from the Canal Alliance, from Marin City People's Plan, from North Marin Community Services, and from West Marin Climate Action. We've engaged a lot of people throughout this process. Where we're at now is that the county is the lead applicant. As Michaela mentioned, TAM will be supporting, or is asking, the staff's asking the board for approval for support for this, for cash support for this. MCE is also providing in-kind donations because there's a 20% match for this grant. So we are in good shape. The grant is due June 14th. And when we speak about multifamily, it's obviously a very complex issue. We are looking at, for the grant application, it's all public access, but it can be on public land or private land. So we have identified with the community-based organizations 50 sites that we will be evaluating. Cool the Earth, if we get the grant, will be the project lead for this opportunity. We'll be evaluating 50 different sites, narrowing it down to a number of sites that we will contract with an electrical engineering firm, which has been identified. It's a minority women-owned electrical engineering firm that will be doing the feasibility analysis. And then a certain number of those that are on public land will go for construction drawings. So we'll be shovel ready for the second phase of the grant, which we would apply for from the IIJA. So that's a quick overview. And then I did want to mention that we've been working in multifamily for how you get charging stations at the property themselves when there is private parking for the residents. And we are moving forward with that in earnest now to really educate folks who are drivers who are in multifamily and that they have education about there's all these new ways to provide charging at multifamily, and really activating them to provide them with the resources to pressure the property manager and the property owner to provide charging stations at that property. So it's something we've been doing for a little while, gosh, actually about 4 years in the background, but now with new solutions are really hoping to get funded to really start this effort in earnest in Marin County.
Okay, I appreciate that update, Carlene. And I was saying to Carlene that once she is successful in getting all this federal money, come the fall, that we would have her back to dive into this in more detail. So I want to thank Christine and Michaela. This morning had been really great, a huge amount of information, and really appreciate everybody, you two, and everyone else who participating in this discussion. Thanks a lot.